think about the politicization of the Biden administration, and he's committed on his way out the door to dump billions and billions of dollars into something he's not even going to be around to administer. And then he barely even comes in to support Western North Carolina. It's like pulling teeth to get his support there. There's lack of clarity from FEMA. They tell people one thing, then they kick them out in the middle of a snowstorm. And these people, I mean, they weren't his voters, but they certainly are in a large propensity in California. And they've accumulated decades and decades of bad leadership that has led to something that could be controlled. But you can't control a hurricane in Western North Carolina. You can't control a hurricane that dumps up to 40 inches of rain in the mountains. So it's absolutely different. One could have been prevented with good government. One could not. And we're going to get North Carolina back on track. And hopefully California will as well. But again, hopefully they'll realize the lesson of bad leadership over and over at a local and a state level.
First of all, the wildfire in LA could have been prevented with good government, but the hurricane in North Carolina couldn't? I'm sorry, but what? We could have prevented this? Do me a favor, take a look at this video and tell me that good government could have stopped 99-mile-per-hour winds, raging fires, and zero rainfall in the last year. Yeah, if only California wasn't so woke, we could have easily gotten this under control. It's the woke that combined hurricane-force winds and raging infernos. I truly don't know which is worse. The fact that scumbags like Ted Budd say this as if it's true, or the fact that he knows it's not, but says it anyway. Also, of all people who should probably know better than to politicize a natural disaster, it is the U.S. Senator from North Carolina, which was the last state that needed federal aid in the aftermath of a crisis. And I should remind you that in the aftermath of the hurricane that hit Western North Carolina, Hurricane Helene, the final $9 billion allocated to that state got over the finish line thanks to the Democrats. Meanwhile, 34 Republicans voted against the bill. In other words, while Ted Budd is on TV being a good little foot soldier for the Republican Party, the fact that his own constituents have any assistance is no thanks to his own party. And yet now, he's doing the exact same thing that he's complaining about by humoring this notion of conditioning aid to California. In fact, you know what's worse? Republicans in the state legislature in North Carolina actually did tie the final disaster relief package for their own state to provisions stripping power away from the Democrats in that state. In other words, they held their own constituents' disaster relief hostage while seeking to entrench their own power. And yet, these people have the audacity to claim that Democrats could learn from them about good government. These people were content to let their own constituents die on the vine while they were enacting a power grab, and yet think Democrats are the problem here. Also, Ted Budd says that Biden and the federal government, quote, barely supported Western North Carolina. I'm sorry, but what? What planet is Ted Budd living in? When Hurricane Helene hit the state, the Biden administration deployed more than 1,500 federal personnel to support the response and recovery operations, opened 14 disaster recovery centers to serve more than 5,700 visitors. FEMA provided temporary hotel stays to more than 2,500 households through transitional sheltering assistance. FEMA inspectors performed more than 21,000 home inspections to help survivors assess damage and apply for financial aid. They restored power to 99% of impacted North Carolina customers due to thousands of utility personnel working around the clock. In total, the administration approved more than $300 million in assistance across the state, including $118 million in individual assistance to more than 87,600 households and more than $189 million for debris removal and other emergency efforts. In fact, here are a bunch of Republican governors praising Joe Biden's response to the hurricane relief effort from neighboring states that were also impacted.
As of today, what has been the ongoing kind of federal assistance for South Carolina?
It's been superb. I finally was able to speak to the president yesterday afternoon after he missed me and I missed him leaving. He left a voicemail, I left a voicemail. So we finally connected yesterday afternoon. He said that whatever we need to let him know, and we're doing that. Also, Secretary Buttigieg called yesterday and said the same thing, and also Deanie Creswell for FEMA has also called. So, and a number of the governors have called. So we're getting assistance, and we're asking for everything we need.
I'm incredibly appreciative of the rapid response and the cooperation from the federal team at FEMA. I've been on the phone over the weekends with the senior FEMA administrator. The team has been deployed. We had our declaration of emergency processed in an expedited way over the weekend and was finalized yesterday. We're adding more jurisdictions to that over the course of the morning. I would expect that 13 more counties and 5 more cities are added to this first declaration of emergency. And now we are expediting the declaration for major disaster relief today. And again, I just want to thank our partners at FEMA for advancing resources before these were even made.
Response was quick from the federal government that allowed for that reimbursement. Those reimbursements are already available to be made, a fast turnaround, frankly. And you see this rush of local officials, FEMA, from the federal to the state to the local emergency management agencies. There is a great deal of hope when you see what is behind the effort, the coordinated effort in this community to begin to rebuild.
So again, I get that Ted Budd needs to bolster his partisan bona fides and that Republicans feel some innate desire to attack California because it's Democratic, but let's not pretend that if any Democrat said any of the things that Ted Budd is saying right now, if any Democrat used Hurricane Helene to attack or blame Republican policies, these people would have lost their minds to such a degree they would have melted into a fucking puddle. And yet, when the tables are turned, because it's just baked into the cake that Republicans are graded on the curve, no one bats an eye. We just expect them to act like children so they get a free pass. And so now, California is contending with the prospect of having disaster relief conditioned on Republicans being able to exact political concessions. Here's Trump giddy at the prospect.
If you add Los Angeles into it, then you can really do one big, beautiful bill, because frankly, they want that so badly. They want the money to go out there so badly. And I don't think we should do a bill until Los Angeles is included. And when Los Angeles is included, we get everything we want.
And here's Gavin Newsom's response to the prospect of Republicans conditioning disaster relief. Can I have your reaction to Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, coming out in support of establishing the precedent of conditioning disaster relief, and him doing it from the state of Louisiana? Like, it's not like this guy is any stranger to what would happen if we start playing politics with disaster relief. So can I have your reaction to that?
I hope it looks in his heart, the pain and suffering of the American people, the trauma that everybody's experiencing in his country. He's the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the United States of America, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all, not some who may have a political point of view. By the way, I didn't ask anyone what their political affiliation was when we're down here working to try to protect people in the community from the ravages of these fires and these unprecedented winds. But you know what? Nor did we ever, never in California questioned whether or not we as taxpayers in the largest state in the union should support the people of Louisiana at a time of emergency and need. We never conditioned it. We never talked about putting the full fate and credit of the United States of America with the debt ceiling bill so we can get tax cuts for billionaires and corporations that don't need it, and then put at risk the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans that happen to live in California.
And this, by the way, is California as a donor state, as arguably the biggest donor state in the country.
Yeah, size of 21 state populations combined. A state with millions and millions of Trump supporters, Speaker Johnson and Mr. President-elect. Millions of your supporters are out here. They need your help. They need your empathy. They need your care, whatever compassion you can express, as opposed to condemnation and divisive language that has aided and embedded nothing except mis and disinformation that's flamed fear and flamed a lot of anxiety for folks that are simply trying to recover and at the same time our first responders trying to address the emergency at hand, which still hasn't been fully buttoned up.
Here's the reality. Republicans are now in control of government, and so they won't be able to whine from the minority like they're used to doing. And so knowing that they're going to be very soon in the throes of the shitstorm that is any effort by Republicans to actually govern, they are in desperate need of a boogeyman to distract everyone. And California, the liberal bastion of the United States, is exactly that right boogeyman. So even though California is a donor state that funds all of these red states, even though California's officials always approve disaster relief for all of these red states, still these Republicans will use California as a punching bag because they know they're going to need some liberal boogeyman to distract from their own incompetence. What we're seeing from these Republican officials truly is the worst that America has to offer at the exact time that partisanship should be put aside. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.